Hello, my name is David Briggs, and today I want to talk to you about the Bible, God's love story for humanity. There are many lyrics that express the idea that it is love that makes the world go around. I remember walking into a gift store recently, and there was an old wooden sign that stated, "All you need is love. Love is all you need." It is also a basic philosophy of the Buddhist religion that has gained a lot of prominence in Western society over the last 50 years. I'm hoping that you will not stop listening and allow me a little more of your time while I introduce the Bible to you. The wonderful message of the Bible introduces us to an inspiring relationship of love with God Himself. Now, maybe you have heard claims like this before, but just give me a chance to explain. The love story that I want to share with you is an extremely serious love story. It is all about real life that deals with the issues of life and death, and of necessity, the matters of the heart. Now, there is a famous Bible quotation that introduces us to God's love for the world. Jesus addresses this for all to hear when he simply states, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." This passage is found in John chapter 3, verse 16, which Christians will certainly recognize. The Bible presents Jesus' compassion for all people, especially including the disadvantaged, such as the poor, the outcasts, and the weak, through his healing actions and teachings. These examples of his love have inspired people for centuries. So if we consider what he stated to his disciples just before he was arrested to later be crucified, he said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. No greater love has no one than this, that lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you." And that's from John 15, verses 12 to 14. This is the basis for stating that the Bible is God's love story for humanity. So in order to discover more details of the Bible's powerful love story, experience has shown that in reading this unique book, that it is of great importance to approach it with an open mind. We state this because there are so many preconceived ideas that cause one to miss the actual meaning of its words by not reading it at face value. What do we mean by face value? It means to accept the meaning of the Bible passage as it reads. For instance, if we take Matthew 5, verse 5, it reads, "Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth." Even though this seems like an improbable event, because we don't experience it in our daily lives, doesn't mean it should be rejected for what it states. Just take the meaning as it reads. The gentle are blessed, and they shall inherit the earth. In other words, people who are gentle can look to a future time to inherit the earth. This is the Bible's fundamental message of God's love story for humanity. God loves those people who are gentle and of a humble disposition. When reading the Bible, the other point is to be sure not to reach a conclusion on a given passage that does not agree with the context of the Bible passage. In other words, make sure you read verses that precede and follow after a particular quoted passage to achieve consistency of an expressed idea. If still unsure about a particular video discussion, write to infobiblebc@gmail.com to get a fuller explanation of the meaning of a Bible passage. In reading the Bible, you and I can discover its message. Every chapter will stimulate some kind of question. Most often, it will help you discover something new by yourself. And this is its own valued pleasure and enjoyment. By paying attention to the context, it will identify if the Bible passages are spoken in parables or through use of symbol. An example is given a little later from a quotation in the book of Luke. Such passages need special care, and if one desires to know their meaning, it is best to write to infobiblebc@gmail.com for an explanation. It takes maybe up to a year as a minimum for most people to understand the Bible message sufficiently to identify all its major principles of belief. Our world today is constantly bombarding us with information, some of which is very disturbing. It is natural for us to seek some level of peace of mind. One way to experience some semblance of peace is to follow Jesus' instruction. Ask, and it will be given you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. This is a quotation from Matthew 7, verse 7. In other words, let Jesus lead you forward to discover his complete message. Seriously, you will be surprised how one or all of these actions of asking, seeking, and knocking will encourage you to discover more about God's love story from the Bible. This can happen daily if you are both careful and diligent in your search for answers from the Bible. They will truly lead to greater peace of mind as you come to value the Bible's message. Now let us allow the Bible to speak for itself on the subject of love. When Jesus was questioned by a Jewish leader as to what is the greatest commandment of all, Jesus stated, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets." That's from Matthew 22, verses 37 to 40. Surely this declaration about the role of love should easily confirm the Bible's message on God's love story. In other words, your diligent search on coming to understand God will reveal his love and purpose for you. There is this binding relationship between us and God. Just read in the first epistle of John, chapter 4, verse 8. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. This passage confirms two important elements of the Bible principle of love. First, the very essence of God is love, and secondly, those who do not love do not know God. In other words, the more we know about God, the more we come to understand his love for us through reading the Bible. Now, it could be said that these commandments are fine and good, but can one realistically live by them? Can one be that perfect? You raise a very good question. How can these passages be practiced completely? Do you remember when Jesus taught his disciples how to pray? He gave one brief but critical, important command. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And that's from Matthew 6, verse 12. If there's one characteristic of God and his Son Jesus, it is their mercy and compassion towards those who sincerely put their trust in him. In other words, the perfect love that we are instructed to exhibit is achieved by the mercy that God and his Son is prepared to extend to us. It is well understood in human relationships that if for some reason I should hurt someone else, if I come to them and say I'm sorry or apologize with sincerity, it is the most effective way to restore my relationship with that person. And conversely, when we truly forgive even the most grievous wrong done to us, it has the ability to heal us and free us from the trauma of the past. The act of forgiveness is a core principle of God's relationship that he offers us. It was this supreme act by his Son in giving his life for us that redeems our relationship to God. In moving on from here, there is one highly important activity to learn and understand to bring God into our personal lives. We mentioned it earlier. It is prayer. Prayer makes the relationship with God and the Son really come alive. The words of Jesus speak this message best. He says in Luke chapter 18 and the first 7 verses, "Now he was telling them a parable to show that at all times they ought to pray and not lose heart, saying, in a certain city there was a judge who did not fear God and did not respect man. There was a widow in that city, and she kept coming to him saying, 'Give me legal protection from my opponent.' For a while he was unwilling, but afterward he said to himself, 'Even though I do not fear God, nor respect man, yet because this widow bothers me, I will give her legal protection. Otherwise, by continually coming, she will wear me out.' And the Lord said, 'Hear what the unrighteous judge said. Now, will not God bring justice for his elect who cry to him day and night? And will he delay long over them? I tell you that he will bring about justice for them quickly.'" Notice how the context explains the parable. Also, believers are designated as God's own elect, or chosen ones, that describe the special love relationship that God is extending to those who believe in him. Described here is God's communication method that believers can experience in daily life. Admittedly, God's way is extremely unique. God doesn't answer our prayers like talking to someone on a phone. No. God responds through people and situations that are currently active in our life. He works within the variation of real life to answer our prayers that come from our heart. We just have to be attentively aware to what happens in the natural course of our current life. I want to illustrate this with one example that comes from the first book of the Bible, Genesis, chapter 24. This contains a beautiful love story. In fact, you might say this example is a love story within the larger picture of God's love story for humanity. I will just select one particular section and describe to you the seemingly miraculous power of prayer that has the mark of reality of the human experience. The Bible passage starts by describing how Abraham, a very special person in the overall Bible message, is at this time very elderly. Abraham instructs his eldest servant to travel to his birthplace in Mesopotamia to obtain a wife for his son Isaac from Abraham's family line. The servant prepares for the trip and proceeds to that location, probably a 2-week journey. He arrives at the city of Abraham's relatives. Starting in verse 12, the servant speaks in prayer to the God of Abraham. He obviously was highly devoted to the beliefs of his master Abraham. In the next set of verses displayed, you will note 2 things that he specifically asked God to do for him. Please read the passage carefully. He said, "O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of men of the city are coming out to draw water." So those are verses 12 and 13 of Genesis 24. What this first request the servant makes for himself is success this day, and secondly, to show loving kindness to Abraham. In other words, help the servant to quickly accomplish the task that he was sent to complete. In verse 13, the servant uses his knowledge of local tradition to meet young women. The second request comes in two parts, also, as shown in bold letters in verse 14. Now, may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so that I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. And by this I shall know that you have shown loving kindness to my master. Notice now how quickly the next part of the servant's prayer is answered. So verse 15 continues, and it happened before he had finished speaking that behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her pitcher on her shoulder. Now the young woman was very beautiful to behold, a virgin, no man had known her. She went down to the well, filled her pitcher, and came up. The servant ran to meet her and said, please, let me drink a little water from your pitcher. Notice again in verses 18 to 21, the servant's prayer being precisely answered. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw also for your camels until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Meanwhile, the man was gazing at her in silence, to know whether the Lord had made his journey successful or not. The servant realized he had to proceed with his prayer plan. So he entices her with expensive gifts and asks her very discreetly to identify herself as noted in bold letters. So in verse 22, so it was when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing a half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels of gold and said, whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge? So she said to him, I'm the daughter of Bethuel, Michael's son, whom she bore Nahor. Moreover, she said to him, we have both straw and feed enough and room to lodge. Then the man bowed down his head and worshiped the Lord. If you read the balance of this sweet and charming love story from the whole chapter at your leisure, you will determine that the servant accomplished the part of the mission at Mesopotamia in less than 24 hours and was on his way back home. We observe the business of selecting a marriage partner overshadowed the beginning of the lifetime marriage of Rebekah and Isaac. I cannot emphasize enough how the Bible illustrates how God will work in the life of you and me when we put our complete trust in God. All we need to do is seek his help when we need it, no matter where it is and what we are doing in certain critical situations that we are faced with from time to time. Normally, we should have a routine time for prayers, such as when we first awake at the start of the day and when we go to bed at night. This then covers a whole day's events and whether the day's activities contain good or troublesome issues for us. If one reads many of the various chapters from the Psalms of the Old Testament of the Bible, there are many passages that tell us how to deal with our troubles that can be extremely difficult to handle at times. They can even cause great distress and despair. This is what the Bible clearly and distinctly states. Share these problems with God through prayer. Consider the theme of Psalm 34 with these sample verses from starting at verse 17. The righteous cry, and the Lord hears, and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. We summarize as follows. Read the Bible and learn the importance of prayer. Prayer helps us to access God's power that provides the help to navigate the troubles and difficulties of this life. With God working for us, we are in a position of finding a whole new level of peace of mind. Are there limitations on what we should pray for? Yes. Jesus' apostle John clarifies this in his epistle, first epistle to John, chapter 5, verse 14. This is the confidence which we have before him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. The big question then is, how do we know what is God's will? Is there a way to find out, or at least have some assurance on what things will be according to his will? The most thorough way to get an answer to this question is by reading the Bible. It provides extensive information about the purpose that God has for those who strive to believe in him and his Son Jesus. We have hinted about the future, when the gentle shall inherit the earth. Jesus clarifies this future angelic life that is the result of the resurrection from death. This is in Matthew 22, verse 30. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. In other words, those who believe in Jesus look forward to a future reward that changes them into angelic beings. And now, then, we can see the much larger picture of God's love story for us. What is necessary is to expand this love story into a second part. Into this upcoming part 2 video, we will discuss the details regarding when the gentle shall inherit the earth. This focuses primarily on the future and the blessings that are in store for all humanity living here on earth. To summarize, we need to diligently read the Bible to enable us to pray effectively to obtain everything that God has in store for our benefit, including peace of mind. In the meantime, we highly recommend that you investigate reading the Bible for yourself with an open mind to discover God's beautiful love story and start practicing the use of prayer. We suggest that you start with the New Testament reading a chapter or 2 a day. After a month or so, start reading the Old Testament at Genesis in the same way. Read one chapter from both the Old Testament and the New Testament per day. Discover the strong connections between the Old and New Testaments that enhance the overall meaning of the complete Bible message of God's love story for humanity. When questions arise in your readings and considerations of the written word of the Bible, just write to infobiblebc@gmail.com. Questions will be directed to the speaker or his designate. God bless every effort you make. Thank you.